It's like 85 or something percent of the companies are smaller than $5 million. Like the bulk of companies are small.
Yep.
And of those, a very large percentage will hit a growth stall at some point in their history, meaning that they're just not growing.
Yep.
So flat.
Plateauing, yep.
They're just flat.
Yep.
So it's not you're in negative growth mode, but you're flat. And so when you start, the canary in the coal mine is when it starts to slow down, are you anticipating 18 months from now, I guarantee you're going to be in a full-blown growth stall.
Yep.
And so the things you start to change now will have an impact. You know, Jeff Bezos says it all the time. If I have a good quarter, the reason I have a good quarter is because decisions I made 3 years ago.
Bingo.
Not because of the decisions I've made today.
Yep. So here's the thing. Entrepreneurs, leaders, salespeople, we all want to create consistent, repeatable, and scalable ways to grow our business and our income. And we want to do it better, faster, and more seamlessly. Why? So we can actually enjoy our lives, take vacations, and spend the quality time that we want with the people that we love. How do we do all this without spending a fortune or running ourselves ragged? That's the big question, and this show is dedicated to the answer. I am so excited about this episode. I have a good friend, someone that worked at a company called Gartner forever, which is one of the most prestigious consulting companies, management, critical thinking, strategic thinking agencies globally. Did that forever. Like you and I, she was in sales. She banged the phone. She hit quotas. She did all that stuff in her early days. She even worked in a circus. Like, we're talking about the ultimate resume here. And today, she finds herself author of the New York Times bestselling book, The Growth IQ. Strongly recommend you check it out right away. And today, she works for a little company called Salesforce, and her job is to go out and evangelize sales and innovation for companies around the world. You're about to get exposed to someone that I have learned so much from, and I'm just so grateful that she shared the stage with me at events, contributed to my clients' success, and has helped salespeople and entrepreneurs and business leaders around the world. So settle in, get your notepad out, get your iPad ready to go, take some notes, and here's my interview with Tiffani Bova. Hey, so Tiffani, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you.
Thanks for having me back.
You have been all over the world. Before we get into that, though, maybe share with the people that are listening right now or maybe watching. I was thinking about your background, like the first time we met, Lori Newman, right? Just we have all this kind of like strange little connections that we've had, but I have that. I'd love my listeners to get context. So tell them who you are, where were you born and raised, and then I'll hit a whole bunch of things that I want you to go deep on. So who is Tiffani Bova?
So there was this time when
That's exactly what I'm.
A long time
ago.
It all
started when I was 3.
Yes. Right.
Yes.
So I was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, which should tell everybody everything about me.
For like a haole, like what was that like growing up?
So I didn't actually notice.
Okay.
Until I was older.
Yes.
And then I noticed.
Yes.
But I remember, my mom told me this story that in preschool we had a show and tell.
Yeah.
And so I brought my mom for a show and tell because she has brown hair and brown eyes and olive skin.
Yes.
So I'm not really a haole.
Yeah.
Right? Like, look at my mom show and tell.
Yes.
And I was like 5.
Was your dad an albino? Like,
no.
Okay, I'm just playing.
Pure Italian.
You can all
right?
see the people that are listening already. Like, we have some context and history. So
but pure Italian, right? So I just look like a very white version of my parents.
How did they end up in Honolulu?
Yeah, so they're from Boston.
Yeah.
Went to Hawaii on their honeymoon before it was a state.
Got it.
And didn't leave.
Got it. How cool.
Which I'm so thankful because it would be like, Thanksgiving, we'd go to Boston to see the family and I'd be standing outside crying, going, people live here?
Why do they do this?
It's freezing. Nothing against Boston. Beautiful city.
Totally
but really,
love it.
between like November and February, it's not really normal.
Forget it.
Forget it, right?
Yeah.
So my grandfather would come to Hawaii every November to my birthday in March and literally, shut down his he was a doctor, so shut down his practice for 3 or 4 months to come to Hawaii when it was bitter cold there.
Yeah.
And so that worked. So I was raised in Hawaii, and it was fantastic.
Yes.
Culturally, it was fantastic. It wasn't just, we learned about Hawaiian history and a lot more things that you wouldn't have had exposure to being on the mainland, if you will.
Yeah.
I was super fortunate to have traveled pretty much halfway around the world before I was 18, all through APAC. And I have really great videos when I was a little kid and I'd be in somewhere in Asia and the video would be rolling, no sound, right?
Yes,
so it would
of
just
course.
be like click, 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 right?
Right.
And you'd see me standing in this square with my blonde hair.
Yeah.
And all these kids would run up and want to touch my hair.
Oh, for sure.
Because they'd never seen a haole, right?
Yeah,
They'd never seen
exactly.
a blonde or
Yeah.
green eyes with fair skin. Like they'd
Yeah.
never seen it. So it was really fantastic, I have to say. It was a great place to be born and raised.
Did you dream as a little girl that you would grow up, go into sales, become a unbelievable business strategist consultant at Gartner, and then one day be the evangelist for Salesforce of all things growth and innovation? Was that the path for Tiffani Bova?
No.
What was the path?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was 29
here.
and my mom goes, I think you need to move out. So, the first
Really?
the first clue was I didn't really know what I wanted to do in my 20s.
Okay.
And so I went to college in the mainland, Arizona State.
Yeah.
While at college, they
Learned
said,
how to party.
Learned how to party.
Yeah,
I
ASU.
picked it because it was number one on the Playboy poll of the
Of course.
best
Yes.
party school. So that was my choice.
Yes.
That's where I'm going.
Okay.
Right? And then the beginning of my sophomore year, my college counselor said, business isn't really for you. Maybe the undergrad of business is not a good idea for you. You should find something else like communication because you're good at that.
Yeah.
Or, maybe it can be.
I can hear my father. How do you bullshit so much? You're good at talking.
Yeah. So how can you get paid to do that? Because business administration and undergrad that may not be really good for you. So every time I get the letter in the mail of donating to the college, I'm always like, yeah, you told me business wasn't for me. I'm donating to my high school.
Exactly.
Thanks, right? So, I didn't really go down the path of getting my undergrad in business or getting my MBA. So I went back to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And I like to joke that everything I learned about business, I learned at the carnival because I was working at carnies. I was a carny from the age of 16 to about 22.
Okay, this I didn't know.
Yeah.
This is new information.
New information.
So what in the world were you doing in a carnival?
Yeah, my best friend's parents owned a full-blown carnival in Hawaii called the E.K. Fernandez Shows.
Yes.
And the husband had the carnival business. So, everything, roller coasters, Ferris wheels,
sure.
yo-yos, right? And I ran the outdoor games. So
wow.
I had to order teddy bears, and there's so many different plush on teddy bears that you really don't need to know all of it.
Yeah.
But I'd have to pick the plush and what was the cost point, what was the cost of sales, how do I hire people for 3 days, build up a carnival, break down a carnival, and move on, 5 days later. And within Hawaii, it would be somewhere in the islands. It was used for fundraising and for things like that, right? And so, it was a multi-million-dollar business over 2 or 3 days. And,
you were an entrepreneur.
I was 16, 17, 18, but learning from an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Right? So the mom had indoor arcades called the Fun Factory. So it was like video games on steroids.
Yeah.
And so I was running, you'd have to run promotions and skee ball and the little tickets and the, counters would have to be clean. And so I moved from the carnival to the indoor carnival and I opened their largest store. And so everything about getting teddy bears to Hawaii on a ship, that teaches you supply chain.
Exactly.
Because when teddy bears don't show up,
Yep.
kids aren't happy.
Yes.
And your customer in this environment is from the age of 4 to 10.
Yeah.
That's a tough customer.
Yes.
Right? And then you have parents who can't win the teddy bear.
Yes.
Who are trying to bribe you to give them the teddy bear.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
yes.
So everything I learned about business, I learned at the carnival. So hence why in college, when they said business isn't really for you, I'm like, this isn't sort of how supply chain works.
Yes.
Yeah. Supply chain doesn't, what happens when the teddy bear container falls off the ship?
Yes.
Right? How do you make that work, right? And so I was doing sales and marketing after that, for little companies here and there.
What was your first sales job? I mean, obviously the carnival
God, I don't even
was
know.
definitely...
I don't even know because I don't know if I ever considered it being a sales job.
Okay, sure.
So I would do nonprofit sort of, raising money for hurricane relief in Hawaii at a bar or nightclub. I was doing fundraisers. I was helping my friends who had clothing lines, to helping sell Maui Jim sunglasses and Mosimo swimwear. And I was just doing all that kind of stuff for friends who had businesses that were bringing products into Hawaii. So I guess that's when I started selling, but I never looked at it I'm in sales.
Yeah.
I was just sort of out there
solving problems.
And it was really when I noticed the importance of building a really strong network, because it was people who I knew in Hawaii that gave me the advantage over people who were coming from the mainland trying to sell into Hawaii. And then I accidentally landed in technology, which was sort of one of those accidents.
Sure.
But
the timing was right in our age, we kind of naturally, if we were paying attention, fell into it. So who was your first tech company?
So it was my own, actually.
Oh.
It was my partner and I, and we were digitizing the Yellow Pages. This is before the web.
Yeah.
And so you could call, sort of Hello Pages is what it was called.
Yes.
And you could call and say, hey, I'm on the corner of Ward and First, and my car broke down, I need a tow truck. And that operator would Boolean search who's the closest tow truck and call that tow truck for you and then send it to you. And
early 90s, 92, 3?
Yeah, right around there.
Okay.
Right around there,
yeah,
right?
I mean, that makes sense, because that was like, welcome to movie phone.
Yeah.
Press 1 for this. It was like, it was the phone was the internet.
The phone was the internet.
Yeah.
And so we raised money, and that sort of taught me that.
Yeah.
And then we had to move to the mainland. Pretty much everyone's like you can't be taken serious, working in Honolulu. Like, it's just not going to work.
You're just smoking weed. Come on.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
And so we moved to California, and then, that happened for a couple of years. We sold parts of it to Sprint, parts of it to Nextel, and then I was sort of out, which it was time for me to go. And I landed at a small software company, and then that was sort of the beginning of me really believing I was in sales.
Yeah.
Where I was, carrying a bag and a quota.
How old were you at this point?
I was just 30.
So 30, you start up a company, I mean, that was super innovative.
I was 26,
at the time.
27, 28, starting up the company.
Was it a good exit for you financially?
It wasn't. But that wasn't the learning for me. The learning was, I'm actually glad it wasn't a good financial exit for me, because I would have made different decisions.
Sure.
Right? And so, but it taught me how to write and raise money. It taught me how to market. It taught me how to sell. I was it. There was two of us.
Yeah.
So anything he didn't do, I had to do.
Quality control, product, innovation, customer acquisition, customer service, finance.
Yep.
You learned everything.
Yep. And I failed miserably at most, but I learned the things I was really good at, which was sales, service, and marketing.
Yeah.
And so when it was time for me to find a real job,
because
when you're working for yourself, there is almost no paycheck until you either exit. So my bills were covered, but I wasn't, banking cash.
Sure.
Right. But I wasn't 30.
Yeah.
So then at 30, sort of life began on this journey that got me to where I am today. And so in my 20s, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't really know what it was I was doing. And then in my 30s, I sort of said, okay, I get this.
Yep.
I'm going to start selling. I like technology. I'm kind of good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, this is sort of late 90s.
I would say, like 96, 97, in that
late
range.
90s.
Yeah.
I was also one of the only women selling technology.
Which was huge.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Was it? I think it's huge. I have many friends that are our contemporaries that they were close to that same time period. But what was it like for you being a woman selling technology in the in the late 90s when selling tech was hard enough, right? Was it different being a woman?
So the very first real job I had as a salesperson, hired as a salesperson, actually answered an ad from the newspaper in the LA Times. Let's date this, right?
Yeah.
And I called a phone number and said, hi. And they said, can we see your resume, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I got to put together a resume. Oh my God. I ordered teddy bears for 10 years. What I mean?
Sure.
What do I put on this resume? Anyway, so I go for my first interview, right? So, I get all dressed up, do the whole thing. And so I'm sitting across from this gentleman who this is his company.
Yes.
And so it's him.
Yeah.
He's an entrepreneur. He has one programmer. He has one customer service person, and he has a woman who was running marketing. So there was three people, and I was going to be their only salesperson.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
And it was it.
That's super startup mode.
Yeah. For those of you who know California, it's at the top of Mulholland and Roscoe Mare. There's a little strip mall. We were upstairs from the kind of video rental place.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just this, and he lived 3 blocks away, right?
Sure.
So this is where we were.
Yeah.
Okay. And so he looks across from me and he goes, so I really like you and I'd like to hire you, but I'm not sure about the name Tiffani to sell technology.
You told me this story. Tell the story. This is so good.
So I literally go, for those of you listening, I kind of tip my head a little bit like Scooby, right? And I said, oh, okay. And while I never felt like I fit my name.
Sure.
I'd never had anyone challenge me on
Sure.
my name, right? So now all of a sudden, it's my name.
Yes.
But, right, okay.
Yeah.
Where before it was kind of like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So then he goes, what's your middle name? So I said my middle name, which is in Hawaiian. And he's like, okay, that's almost worse, right? So then he goes, well, what does that mean, you know?
Yes.
So I said what it meant, and he goes, okay, well, we're going to go with that. But if you'd like the job, that's what we're going to do. So here I am.
You're
walk
going
out.
with the interpretation of your middle name.
Yes.
What was your middle name? I don't know. I've never even asked you this.
Yeah. So, well, my middle name is Kiana, which is Diane.
Sure.
So he goes, we'll go with Diane.
Diane. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go with Diane. So I'm walking out of there in this sort of very interesting dilemma. So my first job interview, really serious one.
Yeah.
I'm going to get hired and I can't use my name.
Yes.
So what is that? I didn't know how to. So I went home.
That messes with your identity.
Yeah. And so I went home, called my mom, and I'm like, I'm not really sure sort of what to think about this, right? So she's just like, look, you need a job. So you'll figure it out, but I'd say don't pass on the job. Take the job.
Yeah.
So I take the job. So we're in our very first, fast forward a couple of weeks, we're in our very first sort of client meeting, downtown Los Angeles, one of the sort of the third or fourth largest law firm in the country. And we're doing this, we were selling into the legal vertical. And so we're at this table, we're about to give this demonstration, and the CEO is saying my name across the table to get me to answer him. So he's saying Diane. Diane. Well, of course, I'm not answering because I'm like, who the hell's Diane? Like, what the hell is going on? Right? And so then I'm like, oh, are you talking to me?
That's me.
Oh, that's me, right? And so then from that point forward, he just called me Tiffani, right?
Yeah.
And so
did you land the gig?
So we landed the deal, right?
Yeah.
And I think at the time he was maybe $100,000 a month he was selling. And then by the time I left, I'd sort of figured out how to sell through and with partners.
Yes.
So the value-added resellers in the technology industry, I went and signed 6 or 8 of them up. So by the time I had left, which was maybe like 10 months later, he was doing pretty close to $1 million a month.
Wow.
So, and I was the only salesperson. So clearly my name didn't
really matter.
Didn't really matter,
Yeah.
right? And so fast forward many, 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 many years, and it was maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, and I ran into him, and he was with his wife, and I remembered his wife. And so I walked up to say hi, and he looks up at me, and he goes, oh, yeah, what is it? Is it candy? I'm like, really?
Did you just punch him in the nose?
I'm like, hi.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I said, no, Tiffani. He goes, oh, that's right. I'm like, and he since had sold the business and made a lot of money.
Yes.
And so I was like, well, it was a good lesson. There was a lot of lessons in that. But
I was just going to say to you, okay, so first of all, for the people that are watching or listening right now, Tiffani wrote this insane book called Growth IQ, and it's over. I'm getting pieces of all the stories inside the book, right? There's so much inside here. But before we get into that, I want to talk Gartner for a second.
Yep.
I don't think the vast majority of people even know what Gartner is or does. So what is the company? How did you get there? And how long were you there? Like a decade?
Yeah. So what happened was through my 30s, sort of my first software job, I changed jobs every 18 months.
Yeah.
And people called it sort of a higher risk. They're like, we don't really understand.
Yeah.
And it had a lot to do with me actually expecting and wanting more out of myself.
Yeah.
So I would always go to my employer and say, hey, I want to. And they'd be like, we really value you. But if, we don't have anything for you. We don't want to lose you.
Yeah.
So I would end up leaving.
Yeah.
So over the course of 10 years, I sort of doubled my salary, doubled my responsibility almost every 18 months. And so I was clipping along. I had just myself, and then I had a small team, and then I had a bigger team, then I had marketing, then I had customer service, then I had, and so I ended my quota-bearing sales career running a division of Gateway Computers, which everyone will remember, the Holstein pattern boxes. And then when that business sort of split in two, I said, I need a break. I've been selling hard for a good 10 or 15 years.
Yep.
And so I started working for a company called Gartner, which is the world's largest analyst and consulting firm for technology.
Yes.
And
say that again.
It's the largest analyst and consulting firm for tech.
What does that mean?
So anybody in sort of the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, all the way, large or small, companies that are going to make acquisitions around technology, big ones, will go to someone like Gartner, and it's usually Gartner, to say, should I buy this? Should I buy that? What's the value? What's my ROI? What are other people doing?
Yeah.
It's really a place in which companies can go for advising around the acquisition and usage of technology. And so when I joined the business in In 2006, the stock was $11 and the revenue was about $850 million. I was there for 10 years, and when I left, the stock was $115 and it was a $2.5 billion business.
That's some serious growth.
That's some serious growth.
What was your role on that?
So I started as a senior director of research, which is really academic. So it was very strange for me to be in that role because I'm sort of a very extrovert, people talker person. And this is, I'm going to write research and sit and think, which was very different for me. So I started as a research director, and then I became a vice president, then became a distinguished analyst. And then I left as a research fellow, which is really pushing the envelope on driving change in the way sort of, I'd say the top 50 tech companies in the world were going to market. They were my clients on how do I sell better, sell direct, sell through partners, sell on the web, and all of those things. So
you said that really quick. I don't know if the people listening right now got the significance of the role that you played in technology that almost every person is using right now.
Yeah, outside of a couple of the big ones that were not sort of my clients, but I'd say 80% of the things people use, I had touched at some point. You know, a launching of a new desktop or laptop or tablet, or a new software application or a new cloud-based application. You know, anybody from Dell to Amazon Web Services to IBM to VMware to Oracle and SAP and Salesforce.
It's everything we touch, whether we know it or not, right? But
it was very
the
focused on the
matrix.
selling of it, right? So they would come to me and go, hey, look, we're trying to enter a new market, or we want to go after mid-sized business, or we want to do better going after the real estate vertical. You know, what do we need to do? Who should we be partnered with? How should we be selling? Should we create very custom products for that particular vertical? Like healthcare needs something that takes up very little desk space. You know, if you're going to sell into education, it's going to be in a backpack. It needs to be light. And so you have to think about those kinds of things in the product design, as well as the way you sell and the way you market and the way you support. And so I was super early in cloud. And so I had a good pulse of where it was going to go. But I also realized I wasn't an entrepreneur to go pursue it that way, that my role was really, how do I help companies be more successful? And I kind of found that was more me than that entrepreneurial spirit I had in my 20s. As you start acquiring things as an adult, you're a little less risk adverse, I think. You know, right? You're a little more risk adverse. So it was like I like the security of working and for someone, but I had this amazing platform to travel around the world and hear things like, you know, smart refrigerators or autonomous cars or, you know, the things that we see and take for granted now, I was very involved in before the public sort of knew what was going to be happening. You know, how do you start talking about a smart refrigerator? Like, how is someone going to really understand what that means? And will the homeowner be willing to absorb all this technology that's going to hit their house? And at the same time, is there enough bandwidth to handle everything that's happening in the house? Right? And then, should we start talking to the architects and the builders of homes to start thinking about smart homes? And so we started moving into talking to developers around smart homes, or, you know, how connected is the car going to be? Is the car going to be a Wi-Fi hotspot? Is it going to be a wallet when you drive through something now? And like those kinds of conversations were things that I was having at that time. So it was super exciting, and every day was a new day, and you felt like you were out there trying to shape the way technology is going to be used or is used in the right ways. You know, sort of the ethical and humane use of technology, looking at it that way. So it was awesome. So that was a decade.
Looking back at your time at Gartner, what are you most proud of?
I'd say, you know, it was different because as a salesperson, I think we have I call myself a recovering seller, although I don't sell anymore. But I'd say, you know, it is a type of career where when you win a deal, it is the sense of pride. You know, you've put a lot of work into it. The reward is that you've won the deal, but then obviously there's a financial reward as well. And so when I was in this analyst role, I no longer had that kind of
kill,
win.
Eat.
Right? I didn't have that. And so I had to learn how to enjoy the wins of my clients. And so when I'd hear an earnings call, or when I'd hear a CEO give an interview on CNBC or MSNBC or Yahoo Finance or wherever, that I'd go like, I helped participate in whatever it is that they are talking about. And so I silently from the background would feel reward from that work that I would do, but it wasn't the same. And so, I had to learn how to be okay with being behind the scenes, and participating. But, some of those relationships, you get to sit in rooms with people that you're like, they are changing the world. And I get to enjoy and participate for 1 hour in my life in this room with these people. Like I wouldn't have wanted to be anywhere else. So what's the trade-off? I don't get the win and the kill and all of that, but wow, I'm sitting in these meetings and having conversations with people that it's life-changing. So it was an amazing learning experience for sure.
And so much of this, coming from, look, what you do today, you can see it all here. I also can say to you, like every coach of mine that's listening right now knows exactly what you're talking about. Hey, your client was just named number one in their office, their state, their company, and the coaches, you're behind the scenes going, I had a part in that. They did the work, right? They did the work. They fought the good fight. They made the sales. They closed the deals, et cetera, et cetera. But there is that sense of pride, like knowing you were a part of it, even if it was for an hour.
Yeah, and I would say that the one thing, the first couple of years, so it's probably the same for a coach. Like if they were a realtor and then they became a coach, it's like you kind of have to learn what that means. So in my world, it was half-hour calls, right? And so a client would call and it would be, I'm a startup and I'm trying to hire my very first salesperson. What do I do? Then I'd hang up. The next call would be, I'm a medium-sized business. I have $5 million in revenue. I'm stuck here. What do I do? My next call would be, I have 10,000 employees. I have 1,000 sales reps. What do I do? And my next call would be, I have 25,000 sales reps. In the course of 3 hours, you'd go from I'm hiring my first sales rep all the way to I'm trying to retrain how to social sell 25,000 sales reps.
You're literally going into the last questions that I want to ask you. So I'm gonna digress for a second. Ready? Salesforce.
Yes.
How did you leave Gartner and end up? We'll close out the loop on the past with Salesforce. Okay. And then I want to dig deep into the book. So how did you make that transition? Why did you go to work for Salesforce?
Well, so this is the lead out was when I didn't realize. I kind of ran out of the stuff I knew in the first 2 years. Because, right? And so you have all these calls and all of a sudden you start going, I don't have any new content. Like I don't have any new knowledge. And so I felt really uncomfortable in the advising people because you may be advising someone to do something that's really not a good idea for them, right? And so
based on your own limitations, your own lack of exposure and experience.
That's right.
That's huge.
Right? Yes. And so by year 3, kind of started to find my stride. By year 5, I really started turning the corner and coming up with, I learned my superpower, which is looking for patterns in all these data touch points I was having, conversations, what I was reading, when I was speaking. And my superpower is to take all those stars and create the Big Dipper. I learned that that's what my superpower was. I didn't have to come up with the ideas, but I was absolutely the one who could tell the story of what the impact was.
Are those the 10 paths? Did that become the 10 paths?
Some of it.
Okay.
Some of it. And then
I'm getting ahead of myself for the listener right now.
And so once I did that, and then I started kind of really pushing the envelope, and people started to call me a thought leader, because I don't think it's something you name yourself. No. Right? They have to sort of start to say that. And as I started to come out with that new sort of research around the future of selling and the impact of digital, I really found my stride. And then that's when I became a fellow. And that's really where you get to carve a percentage of your time out, really do research and put out some stuff. And then I felt like, okay, I've been here a decade. I never had done anything for a decade. No. So then I was like, okay, now I'm itchy. I'm itchy to try something new. Like, what can I do next? And people were saying, I think you have a book in you. Like, oh, yes. Right? And I'm just like, I'm not an academic. I'm not a writer in that way. Yeah. And so Salesforce came and said, hey, we'd love for you to kind of keep doing what you're doing, but we'd love for you to do it for us. Yeah. And it'll give you a very different perspective and platform. And I don't even think they finished the sentence. And I said yes, right? Because I was like, that's the perfect place for me to go. Yes. Where I can now have these really amazing conversations on the innovation side of companies that are pushing the envelope and using technology to be just better at experience, sales, marketing, and service. And so that was the step. Yeah. Then I had to say, okay, if I'm going to write a book, what am I going to write a book about? Yeah. Right? And so then that was that reflection. I mean, the book is really a combination of 15 years of being a practitioner and 10 years of watching it. Yeah. right? I think there is
not watching, consulting, carving,
but
strategy.
But I wasn't responsible.
You weren't doing the work.
I wasn't doing the work, right?
But you created the framework for what they had to go execute on.
Yes. And I think what makes me unique is that combination of a practitioner and a thinker. Because there are lots of thinkers that have never actually done.
True.
And there are a lot of doers that don't think because they don't have enough time to think. And so I had this unique combination of these two things where I'd hear someone go, oh, we did this research for 3 years and we came up with this. And I'd be like, yeah, you could have asked me. I would have been directionally correct. Because I've lived it, done it, seen it. And I might have only seen it at a very small level. Like I've never run a multi-billion-dollar company. No, I have not. But I've advised them and I've seen divisions, small ones, big ones. And so I've never done that level of executive leadership, but I've also sat in those meetings and watched the interaction and watched how teams work and watched how they're effective. And, while I'm not in it and the step back actually gives you a very unique perspective. So the book I wanted to write when Growth IQ sort of came to fruition was, how do I take the practical and combine it with this academic? And I think that's what people have really enjoyed with the book is it's not dry academia research. And it's not all this, here's my story of how I stood up a company. And because that's not my story.
The thing, what I wrote down is there's so much in this book, like just re-reviewing it again before this interview, the case studies, just that, like I'm a huge R&D, like not traditional R&D, rip off and duplicate R&D. Like if she's done it, he's done it, I can do it too. Take the essence of what they did, mindset, strategy, techniques, etc., and then bring it back to my marketplace. The case studies alone had me angry last night. Just like going through, angry in a, like eustress, like positive stress. Do you know what I mean? Like pissed off, like, we know that. How do we, common sense to common practice, right? Like just doing that. So case studies, action plans. But I think we should talk briefly about the 10 paths. And then I want to go deep into some coaching. I want to say to you, I'm a startup. Maybe let's just do I'll give you the 3 and then you'll just touch on the 10 bubbles, right?
Okay.
So I'm a startup. I could be a startup in real estate, mortgage, insurance, a tech company. I just opened up my first dry cleaning business, just a startup. Then I'm a stalled growth business. I have just been plodding along. I'm doing okay, but I'm not growing anymore, right? Like I'm just stuck. And then I'm the fast growing, but I'm nervous. Because there's a lot of those right now in our space. They're growing fast, but the boogeyman's out there. You know what I mean? Like, what if the market shifts? What if interest rates adjust? What if my 3 most important people leave and go start their own business? So there's this panic that a lot of people have. So maybe speak to startups first.
So the first thing, and you nailed it, was I didn't want to come up with a new concept that people would go, I have to learn something new. Right? So I did my homework. And I read, 100 business books, the best business books that have ever been written, kind of a thing. And I said, okay, what did they say? What did I like? What did they say that I didn't like? Did I like the format, the feel? Like I really went into what did I like, not like in the book itself and in the context there. So I said, I'm not going to reinvent this wheel. And so there should not be anything in this book, if you've been in business for any point of time, that is some going like, I've never thought of that. But what I did was I took concepts that have been around forever, in some cases from a sales model perspective, since NCR, which is in the late 1800s, literally, that taught the whole, let's go and do a demo. It was started then. So, and how do I modernize it now with the fact that we have social, mobile, cloud, big data, AI, machine learning, and all these things. And so it's a modernization of thinking that's been around for a really long time. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I needed it to be digestible. So the 10 paths are, someone's going to go, this path, like you've probably read the book a couple times, a year ago when you read it, that path was probably much more relevant to you, where today when you read it, you're going to go, that path is more relevant. And that was the point. I always wanted it to be something that would be a reference back to.
Exactly. And it's not a book you need to read from start to finish. It is a book that you say, that's me. Go to it.
There's value in reading it because I think you might not be aware, but I don't disagree. That if you had to, you could read the beginning and then go pick the path that's most relevant to you.
And unlike a lot of books, it's super actionable. Right? It's very transparent and clear. This is what I have. If this is my problem, this is what I need to do. Am I losing clients? This is how you solve it. Am I not getting enough clients? This is how you solve it. Is the customer experience wrong? Your product wrong? Right? All that stuff. And then this is what you do.
Yeah, and I think behind that was the fact that I am a visual listen learner, not a read learner.
Yeah.
So the book is laid out for someone like me who a little tough to keep my attention.
Yeah.
Right. So I had to float between image and underlines, and it was very specific, so that someone didn't have to read a whole page. I will have helped them say, if you're just going to look at this page, look at the underline and keep going.
You're literally going to see like underlined and italics. Like, okay, forget all this stuff. Just read that. You got it. Move on.
Move on.
Right. That's what I love about it.
And then at the end of the chapter, it's like the key takeaways.
Yes.
So if you really don't want to read the chapter,
just read the key takeaways.
Just read the key takeaways, right? But ultimately, that was that was the thought, right? And so now going back to what you said, I had to come up with something that made this more than just 10 paths.
Yes.
And so to answer the startup question, there's sort of the three foundational pillars of the whole concept behind Growth IQ, because the concept is that growth is a thinking game.
Yep.
You have to outthink your competition.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if that is in fact the case, not the EQ side, the IQ side, is know the context of the market you're going after. And context for me is anything that's happening externally. So interest rates, regulations, anything that may be Brexit, GDPR.
What price range is moving? What price range isn't moving? Where is there too much competition? Where is there exploitable opportunities? Right? Like it's addressing what is the market.
Yes.
Right? In detail.
Context.
Yeah.
Right? So context is the first place to start. And if you don't know the answer to the context, how can you ever make a decision of what your next move is?
Bingo.
Now, I don't want you to do analysis paralysis, and I don't want you to benchmark your competition, because and I can get into that in a little bit, but benchmarking competition, even so that kind of, they are not you.
Yeah.
You are not them. Their people are not your people. Their customers are not your customers. Their neighborhood is not your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so there's enough difference.
There's a little lessons you can learn from it.
There's little lessons, but do not try to duplicate. I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
And so the context is really important. The second thing out of this was it isn't one growth path.
No.
A company is, if ever, I haven't found one, that they're just on one. Because you'd always have to worry about experience, and you'd always have to sell well, which is optimized sales, which those are two paths that I think are in every one of them, right? Because you want to deliver a great employee and customer experience, and you want to sell. I mean, businesses do two things. We make stuff, we sell stuff, right? And you may not build the house, but someone did, and they need to sell it, right? And you're just the conduit to do that. So ultimately, the second was this combination of paths. And then the third one, which I think was the most important lesson that I learned in doing the book, because what I did was I sort of became this anthropologist of growth.
Sure.
I deconstructed what companies did and looked for the patterns, was the sequence in which you do things.
Give us an example.
So I'm going to use Netflix. When Netflix launched in the United States, if they had started in streaming and bypassed mail order, would they have been successful?
No, because there was not enough broadband.
Not enough context wasn't right. Wasn't enough broadband. It was too expensive. Not everyone had a smartphone at their hand. Streaming was not what was going on. It was still very expensive. But there was a DVD player or a VHS in everyone's house, because Blockbuster had proven that worked. But what Blockbuster had also proven was the fact that people didn't like late fees. They didn't like going where there wasn't the movie they wanted. And they didn't necessarily like the experience, right? So they said, well, if we can fix the pain points and yet still deliver the product that they were looking for, the job to be done is, I want a movie at home with my family. That was the job to be done. Now, Blockbuster had tried streaming. Context wasn't right. Right? So they...
Context and timing, right?
So they abandoned it. And then Netflix, they went to mail order, and then they went to streaming. And people might be surprised to know that Netflix still has about 800,000 customers that still get DVDs in the mail. And it's the most profitable part of their business. And so what does that fund and fuel? Original content.
Bingo.
Right? So you put those two things together. Now, Netflix then moves out of the United States, and it's a number of years later where there is bandwidth. So do I start in London with mail order, or do I start streaming?
100% streaming.
Start streaming. So that's what I mean by sequence. Right? And so sequence is important based on the context. You make the right decision based on who your customers are, et cetera. It's, in real estate specifically, you'd almost go, like I was just in Denver this past weekend, and for any of you who have ever flown into Denver, that airport's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And then you got to drive 45 minutes to get into the city. Now they have a train, which takes 45 minutes. But now the Gaylord Hotel has opened 5 minutes from the airport, which is a huge convention hall. And now you see all the land around the Gaylord is up for sale, right? And so if you were thinking sequence would have been, as a developer, I know that eventually people are not going to want to drive in, and Denver's going to say, we need to start putting some stuff out there, right? So then you go, if I were a betting person and I wanted to make a 10 or 20-year bet, I know that the sequence, the timing is right now because the anchor of that particular industry close to the airport is starting to show itself, right? Now, it's a 10 or 20-year bet, but if you listen, it's a winning bet.
For every person listening, think about it in the real estate business. Maybe it would be let buyers finance your listing learning curve. So it's easier to find buyers and easier to work buyers, right? So you start there, and you might start in a lower price range and then work your way up. If you go direct to going after listings, right? Maybe you're first starting with your sphere, and then you're going to go naturally extend to maybe geographic farm. Then it might be expired listings or open houses. So everyone listening is getting, like, there's a lot of value in what you're saying right now. Like, what is the most natural path for me and my market for me to grow?
And really, that is when you are sitting down and planning.
Yes.
Or working with your coach.
Yep.
Right. It's those moments in time where you go, what am I trying to accomplish? And whoever that target buyer is or market is, one, what's the product? How do they want to buy? How do they want to be engaged with, right? And ever since I participated in your event, it's interesting how much real estate business has sort of come my way, and questions have come my way, right? And so I've been asked to go and speak at little offices around the area in Los Angeles, and I did the So anyway, what's interesting in that is the fact that I get asked a lot of, like, I know that it needs to be digital, yet my clients still want to see their house in the Sunday paper, right? And how do I get them past and over that hump?
Yes.
And it's like, well, is that the right spend on the money? Can you prove it to them that if they go this other route, will you be more successful? And so, and many realtors have been doing this for a really long time. And so it's partially internal inertia of like, they have to change behavior, but they have to also coach their customers to change behavior. And so that's something you just have to overcome. But ultimately, that's sort of the mass. At the high end on the realtors, here's what I say, or what I hear is they'll be like, I have 10 clients or 20 clients, like, and they're just my regular clients. And like all this stuff, it's all relationship. It's not going to end up in some CRM system. I don't have to digitally and socially go do all this and all that. And so that's the outliers.
I would actually say that's the stalled growth person.
Could be, because some of them are, hitting it out of the park, right?
I know. And we know a bunch of the same people. So we see that. And yet, the person that's got this I work my sphere, right, is missing so many other opportunities, so many other natural pathways to client success, whether acquisition or whatever. Okay, so I'm getting ahead of myself.
But and so I'd say from a startup, context is first. What your goal is sort of second. And I would also say, what kind of business do you want to build? Because not all growth is good growth.
I love that part.
One. Two. You may just want a lifestyle business.
Bingo. And
if you're a startup and it's like, I just want to have enough to run my family, put my kids through school. Like, I don't want to go and chase, I want to do 5 or 10 deals a year. And that's very different than someone that's trying to get to hyper growth.
Correct.
And so initially you need to make a decision of what kind of company you want to build. And that decision has implications to then if you decide at some point you want to put your foot on the gas, then you have to change things. Sometimes that's harder to do once you've sort of worked your way in. So as a startup, I'd say not all growth is good growth. Not all companies want hyper growth. Some just want a lifestyle business, and that's all okay.
Exactly. As long as you don't make yourself or your income or your lifestyle wrong, right? Because you can turn it on and off in this business relatively quickly. 120 days and you could be in real fast growth.
And you can be not. Right? And so I think, when people talk to coaches or figure out what they want to do, it's really like, what kind of business do you want to build? Do you want to be an individual contributor who works at a broker? Do you want to have a team? Do you want to break out and start your own brokerage? Like, what do you want? What do you want? And there's examples of success all over the place in this industry.
Bingo.
Where people have said, I want to stay as a broker and be a high performer in a broker and let the broker sort of facilitate my growth and give me access to and be one of the top performers. You have others who have said, I've worked for a brokerage and I'm going to spin out and be my own brokerage and have hit it out of the park because I want to have more control over my growth. Then you have others that are just, I like being an agent in a brokerage, and that's all good.
There's no. I want to just be clear. There's no wrong answer.
There's no wrong answer.
But again, I think the key, and you're so on point with this. It is, what do you want, and then what is the context, right? What's happening in the marketplace, and then creating your path. So
and sometimes people don't know what they want. That's a big question.
Oh, I would say the vast majority of people, even like a lot of great people who are listening right now, like if I said to you right now, write down what is your most important goal for the year, some people will stall and pause and go, I want to sell 50 homes, right? Like it's not permanently at the top of their mind all the time because we're a distracted society.
Yeah, but we also don't take the time.
True.
We don't take the time
to get really clear on it.
To get really clear on it, and it doesn't mean that it's in stone and it can't change.
Yes.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, my 20s were very different than my 30s, were very different than my 40s, and have been very different than my 50s. And to your very first question, who would have ever thought a girl from Hawaii in the middle of the Pacific would end up being able to be as blessed and fortunate as I have to do what I get to do every day? There's no way I could have known that this was my path.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
And only did the path start to kind of show itself when I was more open to see it.
Yes.
So it's a huge point in all of this.
We could spend a lot of time just on that. Like, what has always impressed me with you is you're just like, let's learn, let's take it on. Like, what is it? Tell me more about it, right? There's so many people that, that the wonderful book, The Growth Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck, right? She's like, in the 4th grade, people either become fixed and start to hide, or growth, tell me more, I don't understand, I want to learn, right? They accept that risk. You clearly are just massive growth mindset. Where did that come from?
Yeah, and this is one of the things for the coaches listening that I learned as an analyst is we can't just believe everything we say for advice because it doesn't always work for everybody, right?
100%.
Because remember, their context is not your context.
Bingo.
Their experience is not your experience. So anybody that is advising anybody, you have to, if you're not with a growth mindset, you're in the wrong business because 100%. If you're so fixed to not learn, there's no way. I mean, I'm in an industry that is innovating daily. I mean, daily, right? And so keeping up with the 4th Industrial Revolution. The other day I was in Stockholm at an event and they said, maybe we're on the cusp of the 5th Industrial Revolution. I'm like, oh my God, we haven't even absorbed the 4th, which for those of you listening, it's sort of the digitizing of business. The World Economic Forum started talking about it. And so could we even be at the 5th? And so then it's like, so what do I do on my flight home? I download everything about the 5th and the conversations around the 5th, and is it really coming? What does that mean? Who's saying what? Yeah. What do I believe? What's my point of view?
Yes.
And so if whatever it is that you do, whatever you do on a daily basis, I believe in 2 things. 1, be a student of whatever your profession is, always learning.
Yep.
And 2, you have to trust the process.
Bingo.
Right? Those 2 things for me have just proven, but in my 30s, I wouldn't have told you that.
Yeah.
I would have told you how much money can I make and how quickly can I make it.
And we've got the whole range of everybody listening right now. There's some of those and some of the people
and then in my 40s,
and
it was like, and then I sort of found what my superpower was. And then when I found that, then it's like, do I double down on that?
Yeah.
And my decision was to double down on that.
Smart.
I could have resisted it and said, no, I want to keep doing this. And many people still come back and go, hey, run this, be our sales leader, come back and get in the grind and run a division. And I'm like, I don't think that's my path because I get this opportunity. Like in the last 2 weeks, I've been in front of 10,000, 12,000 people.
Yes.
And so I have a much broader ability to have, if I can just influence a handful of the 12,000, right? Or the people that read the book or listen to these podcasts or listen to my podcast, whatever. I feel like that's the path for me right now. And maybe that'll change. But right now I feel like that's the right one.
I love it. Okay, let's talk about, you talk a lot in the book, stalled growth.
Yep.
Right. So give your, what is stalled growth? What are the signs of stalled growth? And then what do they do about it?
Yeah. So this was, for me, I feel like growth is getting harder. I believe sales is getting harder because the market is getting much more crowded.
Yep.
And so I would say to you that in looking at the statistics that I call out in the book, that it's like 85 or something % of the companies are smaller than $5 million. The bulk of companies are small.
Yep.
And of those, a very large percentage will hit a growth stall at some point in their history, meaning that they're just not growing.
Yep.
So flat.
Plateauing, yep.
They're just flat.
Yep.
So it's not you're in negative growth mode, but you're flat. And so when you start, the canary in the coal mine is when it starts to slow down, are you anticipating 18 months from now, I guarantee you're going to be in a full-blown growth stall.
Yep.
And so the things you start to change now will have an impact. You know, Jeff Bezos says it all the time. If I have a good quarter, the reason I have a good quarter is because the decisions I made 3 years ago.
Bingo.
Not because of the decisions I've made today.
Yep.
So, you know, if you're a realtor,
That
do
is so
you have
profound.
an app? You can't stand an app up right away. So you always want to get where your customers are going and welcome them when they show up.
Yeah.
And so the decisions you make today is going to be a little bit ahead. I don't need you to be Bezos. I don't need you to be Steve Jobs. I don't need you to be my CEO, Mark Benioff.
Yeah.
I just need you to be 18 months ahead. So the decisions you make today have impact a year, 18, 24 months out. And if you're stuck in a growth stall, the decisions, let's just say in this quarter, I'm using quarters,
sure.
right? In this quarter, it'll be very difficult for you to turn it around in quarter.
Yep.
I mean, unless all of a sudden you're at a dinner party and 4 people go, oh my God, I want to sell my house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, okay.
And it's really expensive, and I'm going to low price it. Like,
Yeah.
And
I'm going to pay you 5%.
No.
And you know what? You can have the sell and the buy. You can get both sides of the deal. Like,
It takes 120 days on average just to go from a lack of momentum into some form of momentum, right? Because the calls even in our world, the calls I make today, they're really going to maybe do something within the next 4 to 6 months.
Yeah,
right. So you keeping that in context.
What's tough about real estate is, so I bought my house, which I shared it, right? I bought my house in '99.
Yep.
So I've not gone and bought another house,
No.
even though Lori's my best friend, and whenever I buy a house again, she's my realtor, as everybody knows that was in your audience, right?
Yes.
But I'm a 20-year sales cycle.
Yeah.
So I'm just now going, might want to sell my house. Right? So so I called her, and then she gets all excited, but then of course I don't really mean it because then I have no time to do it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that's a 20-year sales cycle. So this is an industry that's very unique. It's a big ticket. It might be a once-in-a-lifetime buy.
Yep.
You know, and so it's always
but
about.
But if you do it right with the experience, the referrals are unbelievable. And if you're sitting there listening right now and you're like, but I'm not getting referrals, you missed the first part. If the experience is unbelievable, the referrals flow.
Yeah, and so I would say to you, like, if I was just going to stand up, I wanted to become a realtor, and I came to you, Tom, and I said, I want to sell 50 houses.
Yep.
Like, that's my goal.
Yep.
How long do you think it would take me from day one? Like, let's make the assumption I passed the real estate test.
Yeah. So
which is another question.
You have your license. I could, inside of our hub, reverse engineer the math. The challenges, the math is the easy part. The plan, the tactics, the strategy, the schedule, that's the easy part. The who are you? What is your real ambition? What is your willingness to work? Are you going to complain about how hard it is? So some people do it in a year, very, very, very small percentage. Most, it takes them 7 to 10 years to get to that level. Right? Just because of all the growth they have to go through as a human being, as a business person, maturing in the business, understanding the market, understanding customers, all the stuff you're writing about in the book.
Yep.
It takes time.
That's why I said trust the process.
Yeah. Yep.
You just got to trust the process.
100%.
And so
that's even making your 5 calls today to your database and nobody's interested, but making the 5 calls today and doing it every day for the entire year, that's trusting the process. I say, you shake a tree, somewhere an apple's going to fall.
Yeah, and when I would say, and so is it still 5 calls?
Yeah.
Is it the ad in the newspaper?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it 5 posts?
Yeah.
Is it 3 calls and 2 posts?
Yeah.
Is it 20 tweets and 1 video on YouTube?
Yeah.
Is it, right?
The answer is all the above.
All of the above.
Yeah.
And so I think if you are in a growth stall, the unfortunate reality is the canary was telling you 18 months ago.
Yes. Or
a year ago. And you weren't paying attention.
Yep.
And so that happens on both sides, both positive and negative. And so, Oprah said on her show one day that you get these whispers in your life, and then it becomes from a whisper, it becomes sort of a smack on the head, and then becomes, a baseball bat, and then it becomes a brick on your head, and then you kind of go, oh,
I need to change.
I need to do something, either good or bad, right?
Yeah.
And so writing the book was a whisper. It was a whisper. People were whispering, and then finally, like, it dropped on my head, right?
Yeah.
And one of your people that you admire, who ended up writing a quote on the cover of my book, was the brick on the top of my head.
Yep.
Like Seth Godin pulled me aside and said, you have to write this book.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is the last.
Like if you were thinking about buying the book and you understand who Seth Godin is, you should buy 10 copies of this book. Because that was when you told me that, I was like, Seth is like one of my heroes. Like,
which is why I said
genius.
that.
I mean, it's
So ultimately, so I'm going to go back to what I was just saying, that you've hit a growth stall, that there's been whispers, and now the growth stall is the brick.
Yep.
And so you weren't paying attention.
So tell me the 3 things I have to do. I'm in a growth stall. What do I do?
So I would you just said it. I would reverse engineer what got me into it. Like what has changed?
Yeah.
Has the context of the market changed? Yep. Have my top 3 referral sources moved out of the state?
Yes.
Like what has changed?
What marketing's working? What marketing's not working? What's the addressable market? What are the opportunities I'm not exploiting? It's all of that stuff.
All of that stuff, right? And I'm not a fan of annual planning because in your space specifically, things can change so quickly.
Yes.
The interest rate can change one day and things fall apart.
It did this year.
Or there's the fear of shutting down borders, or there's Brexit, where that may be stopping international investments into California as an example, or things that are going on in China, which is another very large investment engine for us in real estate in Southern California.
Yes.
And so those kinds of things changing, you have to keep up on it.
Yeah.
And so my piece of advice would be not only the coaching, right, but carve in an hour or 2 every single week to do a touch base on the context.
Yeah.
Are the interest rates the same? Is that ask yourself 5 questions, whatever those 5 are, or 10, whatever it is. And so just every day, it's sort of like an affirmation every morning when you wake up and you look in the mirror.
Yeah.
You go through your affirmations.
Yes.
Like, I want you to do it on your business every week and affirm those contexts.
Yes.
Are these things all still the same? Great. Let's go.
I can tell you the 4 things that our coaches are doing with our clients. Ready?
Okay.
Number 1, where are we in relationship to our goal and how did we get here? Right? That's number 1, always. And we do annual planning, but then we go monthly, quarterly. Number 2 is business intelligence, right? Tell me about what's happening inside the market with the numbers, the analysis of the last 90 days of performance, right? What price points are moving, what price points aren't, and then your numbers the last 90 days, your call to contact, leads, appointments, conversion, all of that. Then number 3 is, let's talk sales and marketing. What are we adding? What's working? What's not working, right? So it's all sales, marketing, lead generation, top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, the whole experience. And then the last one is, what systems are we putting in place in the last 90 days and then moving forward the next 90 days to stabilize our growth and make sure that you're buying time and freedom for yourself. And it seems like those 4 things, and I didn't frame them in a question, but I want to give you context. Like all of my clients, that's what they're experiencing all the time from their coaches.
So I like all of them.
Give me a 5th.
Well, so I would say that those are that's the hard stuff that's easy.
Yes.
Because they're numbers.
Yep.
It's the soft stuff that's hard.
Yep.
That you can't
measure. The qualitative versus the quant. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. So what's the question?
Have you asked your customers what great experience they've had lately outside of real estate?
Yeah. Yes.
Was it at a restaurant?
Yes.
Was it at a spa? Was it at a hotel? Was it at an airline? Like what experience did you have lately? And could you replicate that in your business?
Yeah.
Why did they choose to buy from you? Could you answer that question?
Yeah.
Well, the top 3 reasons why people buy from me are and not what you think they are.
In your customers' words.
In your customers' words.
Yep.
And so do you feel comfortable going and doing that on your own?
Yep.
Or do you hire someone to go survey your customers?
Yes.
Customers who bought from you once,
Yep.
bought from you multiple times, bought from you and then didn't do it again and went to another agent because they went to another agent. Why?
Yeah.
Or someone who you didn't get a listing.
Yeah.
Why didn't they choose you?
Yep.
That's the soft stuff. And for me right now, that's the hardest.
Yeah. All my Elite and Team Plus clients that are listening to this, we just did this exercise in February. We need to be surveying our, I was talking net promoter score, right? Like how referable are you? And then
I was going to use NPS, but that's always tough, right?
Yeah.
Because it's tough.
Yeah, it's basically just how referable are you for the person that's listening right now? Like how referable are you?
On a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah, scale of 1 to 10.
One question.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
Right?
How likely are you to refer?
That's it.
Scale of 1 to 10.
And when you get an 8, 9, and 10, we both know what that means. Everything less than that basically sucks shit, right? That's the only way to describe it.
Yep.
Like you have to have an 8, 9, or 10. The backup question that we gave them was, what was it about the service I provided that made you feel this way?
Yes.
Right? Trying to get into the more like,
yeah,
what did I do? What was the experience?
I don't know if we can do that as an individual. Could I sit across from you and be like,
oh, no, all in like SurveyMonkey.
Yeah, but remember, not everyone's going to sit at SurveyMonkey
100%.
and answer those questions, and they may be like, "Oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings,"
yes.
or so there's all that,
yes.
right?
Yep.
But is there a way where you can really get to the heart of it,
Yeah.
and maybe even go to other people in the office who are really successful or have been doing this a while, and maybe saying, "Hey, can I talk to your customers?"
Yeah.
And I not to take them.
Yeah.
But I want to know why they do business with you. Like, what is it about you?
Yeah.
Not because I want them, but because I aspire.
I'll survey them and I'll give you all the data. I just want to R&D.
Yeah.
I want to know what you're the most successful person in the office. Yeah. That would freak a bunch of the most successful people out, but like the ones that are really smart would go, yeah, survey my clients, let me see what you're going to do, and then let's play with that. Because the data is where that's where all the joy is for your marketing ventures moving forward. That's what gets you out of stalled growth.
Yeah, and I read a book by Sally Hogshead many years ago on trying to find out what I am and what I'm known for.
Yeah.
That's really sort of her whole philosophy. So I'm a maestro for any of you who have done this, right? And what I did was I went and I read through hundreds of emails of people who gave me feedback after I left stage.
Yep.
And I found the 4 or 5 words that were consistently used.
Yeah.
So I then made that my LinkedIn profile, my Twitter profile,
100%.
my Facebook, right? And so I wanted their words to tell me sort of what I was. And so, maybe your high performers are not going to let another high performer walk in and like go and survey their people.
Yes.
But if you're a high performer, and you're really comfortable and confident with your clients and your customers and your business.
Yes.
Like, what's the harm in paving forward for the next generation?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, giving back is, what it's all about.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying to everyone, I'm not saying give them your secret sauce, right? But what is it about you that people really like?
Yeah.
Right? And if it's one thing can help someone else to be successful, going back to, you should feel proud that when they make it to club or they make it to the 1% club, for realtors, or they're named as the top performer for the month, you can be like, way to go.
Yeah.
Way to go.
The good news is the vast majority of your listening, if you're in the real estate space, you can read Zillow publishes an annual consumer guide. So does the National Association of Realtors. And I literally get these things. I cover them. I read them from beginning to end. I turn them into 50 or 60 slides and say, guys, this is what consumers are saying.
Yeah.
Here's a new concept. Give the people what they want, right? Like, stop trying to do it your way. Give the customer what they want, and you're going to win.
Yeah, there's actually a stat in the book that came from Bain and Company. It was a big consulting firm that they said that I'm going to average it, but an average of 90% of businesses that find it challenging to replicate profitable growth, it's because of internal inertia, not external factors.
Yeah.
And so the internal inertia in this example that you're talking about is us, like as individuals.
Yes.
And so for me, the backbone of corporate growth is personal growth. And so you have to, like, if you wake up every day and you're comfortable,
I'm looking at my guys right now.
You are taking the easy path. You are taking the easy path. Like, you got to wake up and get uncomfortable. Like, what do you mean I need to do a YouTube video? What do you mean I need to go and, ask my customers what they think? What do you mean I need to go and read these reports? And like, that's uncomfortable for me. I don't like it. Perfect. That's what you need to do today.
But again, remember, growth versus like that growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Like the fixed mindset, they epitomize being stalled out. Okay, let's do the last one.
Okay.
I'm fast growing, I'm high growth, but I'm nervous all the time.
Yes.
What do we do with that person?
Well, I think ultimately maintaining real hypergrowth is hard.
Yeah.
And it's
how many years in a row should you be able to do it?
Well, it depends. I mean, I happen to work for one of the fastest growing software companies of all time, and we're, piling it up, and we're expected to continue to pile it up. But, but we all work really hard. Yeah. We love what we do, but we work very hard. And so I think that it is all about going back to, what do you want? If you are really trying to build a business that's doubling every year or doubling every other year, is it because you want to set yourself up to be sold? Is it because you want to leave it to your kids? Like, what's the goal of that? And do you need to be growing? Unless you're publicly traded. I mean, that's a different conversation. But if you're a private company, it's like, that's your own self-pressure and that's your own self-talk. And so I'm not a fan of burning out. I mean, I think that we are in a time right now where you can burn out really quickly. And so I would say, is this the kind of growth I want? More importantly, I'd say, are the people who work for you happy?
Yes.
Because you aspire to have double growth. Mm-hmm. Do they want to work that hard? Is that what they want to do?
Yeah.
And your customers will only be as happy as your employees.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure you're taking care of your people. If you're going to push that hard, then have fun too.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to push that hard, they're all rowing for you. Ultimately, give them a part of the company. Yeah. Like, you know, what can you do to make sure that it's fostering a culture that is able to maintain in a healthy way that kind of growth? Because you don't want people burning out. You don't want it to be that people don't like their job.
No.
You don't want it to be that you're that kind of leader that you're just, you know, the expectation is so ridiculous every single day. I mean, that's just not a good thing.
Yeah. And yet Bezos and others seem to pull that off.
Well, but you...
And I'm just saying, just sitting here thinking, because we think of so many other leaders that have like created these amazing cultures, and then some are just notorious for being grinders.
But ultimately, if you look at those that are high performing right now, they're also surrounded by people who are super talented at picking up the load, right?
True,
this is not a sort of business and growth is not a solo sport, right? And so you'd say, well, you know, in some companies, it's not that person. Yeah. That's just the person everyone leans on. But there's a lot of people making that happen.
Exactly.
And you have to empower the people. I mean, Steve Jobs was very famous for saying, I'm going to hire people that are smarter than I and let them do what they do. Like, why would I want to micromanage them?
Exactly.
Why'd I hire him?
Yeah.
Right?
And many people always thought that he was just a jerk, mean, but he did. He hired amazing people and sort of, this is what I want, help me make it happen. Yeah.
You know, and having such a eye for detail on and knowing what you want.
Yeah.
You know, then it comes down to the soft skills of how do you manage people? Do you need to manage them with the stick, or can you manage them because you've inspired them? And I think, you know, there are some managers that are able to do both and get the best out of people with a little bit of hard love, you know, tough love, and a lot of inspiration. But I think for anybody, you know, listening who has a team or people who work for them, like, it's your job to be the storytellers of what you want your people to do.
100%.
And you have to inspire them to show up every day and not feel like this is a paycheck, it's a grind, I'm just looking for my next gig.
Yep.
Like, I'm going to stay here until, like, that's not what you want.
No.
You want people going, I would run through fire for this person. And when they're out at a cocktail party, they're actually looking for leads for you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, you want that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you want them to aspire to go, I want to become a realtor. Yeah. And I want to work on I want to be you. Like, I want to, that's what you want. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's where you really, as people who have the ability to shape kind of the next generation, you have to take that opportunity to do what's right.
It's interesting. They're all decisions, right? Yeah. The first one is all decisions. Understanding the
market. Well, that's why growth is a thinking game.
Exactly. And then the second one is all about the decisions you made maybe 18 months ago, and are you listening to the whisper? And the third one is all decisions around people.
Yes.
Right? People.
Yeah, and Tom Peters, who I'm a huge fan of, he wrote In Search of Excellence, and he's working on a one-pager right now on just sort of employee excellence. And it's like, you know, be excellent in the next 5 minutes, you know, and he talks about management by wandering around.
Yep.
And so I'm a huge fan of really striving for excellence, and his excellence is all about that employee. It's all about the people. It's all about people first.
Yeah.
It's all about making sure as leaders that you pay attention to the people, and things will follow behind that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I you know, for anyone listening to this that wants to sort of understand what that means, like, be excellent in the next 5 minutes. And take that 90 seconds and talk to somebody on a team that, you know, you maybe don't talk to on a regular basis, and just touch base with them, make sure they're okay and they're happy and everything's good, and can you do anything? And
exactly.
You know, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. We could do this for about 7 more hours.
Yes.
This has been really, like, I mean, I've read the book. You all should buy the book immediately. Did you do an audio?
I did.
Okay, so I've not done the audio yet. I'm going to get the audio next.
Yes, the audio.
Did you do the audio?
I did.
No,
I did the audio.
Oh, cool.
Yep, I did the audio, and it was like 41 hours of recording for 9 hours and 10 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, for 9 hours and 10 at a normal speed. You can get it down a little bit if you speed it up.
Yeah.
But the things you miss in the audio is you miss the underlines, you miss the sketch notes, you miss the subtleties of all the work I put into the format of the book. So many people have listened to the audio and then have bought the book.
Smart.
And then they get much more out of it, or they do the reverse.
Yeah.
And it's on, you know, Kindle as well, and And now it's gone international. So now it's in the UK and the Commonwealth, and it's on its way.
Congrats.
To Spain and Portugal and Vietnam and Poland and am I missing something? China.
Your publishing company's like, we're going here and here and here.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks.
I mean, this is like first book. And
first
you
book,
knocked it out of the park.
Wall Street Journal bestseller and 800 CEO read book, up for book of strategy and management for the year. And I lost to Brene Brown. But if you're going to lose to anybody,
that's a good one to lose.
That's a good one to lose to. Yeah. Her Dare to Lead is a great book. Another great example of really how to be a leader that inspires you to really move forward. And she's fantastic. So ultimately, I'd say I'm pleased with the book, and it's interesting to get all the feedback now.
Yeah.
Now that it's out there,
Yep.
You start to hear what really resonated with people, what stories they really liked.
Yes.
Things I might have missed.
Sure.
Giving
or
as many.
You tell us more about this, or go, amplify
that.
Yeah,
and because I do so much keynoting and I get so much feedback, the thought process of it is always evolving. So this has become this platform for sort of what I'm talking about now.
Yes.
While the book is a great foundation to do that, it's definitely not everything I'm talking about.
Yeah, same thing with every one of my books. It's the same exact. You write it, you spend all that time research, writing, creating, and then you finish it and you're like, okay, then you go do the first talk.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, wait a minute, hold on, new distinction.
Yeah.
Right? Also, check this out, or here's what's happening in the market right now.
Yeah, my very first interview on, and my team would know this, like on MSNBC, with JJ Ramberg, was terrible. It was awful. It was horrible. Like, if you want to ask me about like innovation and what's going on with technology and how companies are growing, but then like to be put on the spot for in 2 minutes saying, what was the book about? I'm like, oh my God.
I did so many of those radio interviews. I hated all of them.
Well, this was TV.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's worse.
Worse,
that's
right?
Good.
And so literally I called my team and I'm like, oh my God, like that was so bad. It was so bad.
You're like, write me 5 sound bites. I just need to go, this is tweetable. Bam, bam,
but
bam.
I did have them.
Yeah.
The problem is that it wasn't natural for me, right? And so I hadn't found the rhythm of, right? And so going back to, how do you knock on someone's door? Or how do you get them to answer the phone? Or like, you got to find your rhythm. Like if you're not authentically you, someone wrote those sound bites for me.
Yep, exactly.
It's not me.
Yep.
Right? I had to find my sound bites and how do I describe it and talk about the process. And so my next one was Yahoo Finance, which was like the next day. It was much better.
Yeah.
But now JJ and I joke that, I thought it was really bad. She didn't think it was that bad, but I think it's because I have an expectation of like how quick I am. And it just stopped me in my tracks because I'm talking about myself, which is not normally what I talk about, right? And so it's been a huge learning journey for me, and it's given me, like this past week I was at the Art of Leadership in Canada, and I had the opportunity to share the stage with Malala, and you just sort of go, wow.
Pinch yourself.
You do, because you kind of say, I get all wrapped up in my first world problems, of I got to put gas in my car, and should I go take an MBA, and I need to go get a mammogram or my blood work done, or an MRI,
sell my house and buy another one.
And buy another one, and I got to make a car payment, and then you sort of go, it just doesn't matter, right? And it was I not only got to share the stage with her, but I got about 10 minutes backstage, and
powerful.
It's just powerful, just super, where you just sort of go, how can I, make a difference? Like some of the things we were talking about, as a realtor, you've been really successful, how can you pay it forward? How could you help maybe with the homeless crisis in the neighborhoods you work in?
Yes.
What could you do to help renovate the schools in the neighborhood you work in? Do fundraisers to renovate, buildings that are historical buildings. Like, just that kind of stuff. Like you have the ability and the platform and the network, and like that's the way. And I'd say in my 20s it was about, I don't know what I want to do. My 30s was I want to make a shitload of money. In my 40s, it was about, I don't really know what my superpower is. And in my 50s, it's all been about, how do I try to make a difference in some way? And the book has been the platform to get me in front of, those kinds of conversations where you just literally stop for a moment. And for everybody who's, listening in the United States, like we have first world problems.
Yes.
We could do better, absolutely.
Yep.
But in the whole grand scheme of things, there's someone driving across the United States right now that was the activist who got women to be able to drive in Saudi Arabia. And she's driving across the United States right now, like as we're interviewing. She just left Los Angeles this morning. She's on her way to DC.
Yeah.
Trying to raise awareness around this is what's going on.
Yes.
But before she could come to the United States to do this drive, to raise awareness, she had to get permission from her father.
Yes.
She's 39.
It's so crazy.
And when her son turns 18, he becomes her guardian.
Yeah.
Because there, women are considered minors.
Yep.
So, like, okay, that little thing I just rattled off to you, I was not thinking about before I had this conversation with Malala, right? Right? And so you just sort of go, as you get in your car in the morning and drive.
Yeah. And complain about traffic.
Which I'm not sure if I'll ever give that up. But, at the end of the day, right? I mean, we're getting deep. But I mean, I think that's, these questions about hypergrowth and startup and 5 phone calls and getting coaching and doing all that, we are all very blessed. And so, we just need to make sure we stop for a second and say, can I carve some of my time out that I pour into, making money and take an hour a week or a couple of hours a month and figure out how do I give that much energy to something or somebody that doesn't have what I have.
Mentoring 10 kids. Helping on it. I mean,
coaching is a great way to give back, right? I mean, coaches is a great way to give back. And so I'm not saying it has to be altruistic, but ultimately it's just, and I'd say the millennial generation now is so much more conscious of it, and they're taking jobs and doing things that are more socially conscious. I just tweeted something the other day about how millennials said they would buy more real estate if it was more technology savvy. And I CC'd you on the tweet, right? Because they're just like, I would buy more if financing was easier and I could find it easier and I could do all these things easier. So, I think those of us those of you who have been doing real estate for 20 or 30 years, your competition is going to be this new generation that is far more technically savvy.
And it's
far more technically savvy.
Right here.
Yeah, on the phone.
Right here.
Right on the phone, right? And, what I also heard on my little real estate tour of people asking me questions is, I don't want to use the technology. So I go, well, do you shop at Amazon? Do you call an Uber? Do you use OpenTable? Do you book your hotel rooms online? The answer is yes. So you're not really afraid of technology.
Yeah.
You just don't want to change your behavior at work.
Bingo.
Right? And so we all have to remember that we've absorbed technology in our personal lives. We have to figure out how do we apply that and specifically in real estate, I feel like there's so much opportunity unmet. When someone still knocks on my door, or I get, a dozen, which I said at your event, I get a dozen mailers, 4-color, this big, beautiful, they go right in the trash and I don't read. Yeah. What could you do with that money?
Yeah.
Differently.
Yes.
I'm not saying that doesn't help, right? But it can't be the only thing. And if you had to give up something, might that be the thing you give up? And spend money on, social media or on a YouTube channel or on a podcast or on whatever it might be.
Every one of my listeners is like, oh yeah, Tom Ferry, multi-channel. Hit him with the direct mail, make the phone call, see the tweet, do a live video, do an open house, be in the community, see you at church. Oh, she's my realtor. Like, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where's the unmet opportunity? Do you go do a little talk at a senior community about how to do reverse mortgages, or is your will all put together? Like,
these are strategies we teach. I love it.
It's like
you're just pulling these ideas, and I'm like, yes, we teach that. Yes, we teach that.
And so you just have to find something that is authentic to you, that makes you different, and double down.
I love it. So where can people find you?
Well, they can follow me on Twitter at Tiffani, not my middle name. At Tiffani,
Diane.
At Tiffani_Bova, and it's Tiffani with an I, so really complicates things. Yep. And then LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and I have a podcast called What's Next with Tiffani Bova. I've had some great guests on.
You should absolutely check it out.
And the book Growth IQ.
Yeah.
Buy it retail, buy it online.
Hey, well, listen, for my listeners out there, I know you got a lot of value out of this. Do me a favor, share this with some of your friends that are maybe not in your industry and even inside your industry, and absolutely check out this book, Growth IQ, Tiffani Bova. Follow her on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. She is an absolute rock star. Tiffani, thank you for being on the show today.
Me, Tom.
I totally appreciate it.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us. Yes. It was a lot of fun. I could do this all the time.
Totally.
If it wasn't 2 hours away in traffic, I would do it all the time.
True. All right, we're out. If you want more information about this episode, including my show notes, mentions, links, and everything else, make sure you visit tomferry.com/podcast. That's tomferry.com/podcast. Thanks again, and talk to you soon.